Hey guys, Big Phil back here with you. I just wanted to go over something real quick. That I know I said in the last video that I had written some stuff on a blog over the last year or so, and I wrote a lot of stuff, but I don't feel like people really paid attention necessarily as much as I would have wanted them to, or maybe they didn't read them all or whatever. So, just as an easier way to get this stuff out there, I'm going to go back through the blog post because I think that it's important information and I think that it's stuff that will be valuable to you guys and stuff that you may want to hear. So I'm going to go back through those posts one at a time for each video until we get to until I exhaust those, and then I'll come up with new stuff for you guys. But I want to kind of start with just questions in general and the way that people ask questions, and the kinds of questions that they ask, and just kind of some of what I've seen as to maybe why they ask questions or why they don't. I know, in some cases, like some people see me and they freak out about the beard, and some people freak out because they just see the chair and they don't know really, how to react to that, or what questions they can ask or can't ask. Generally, for me at least, I'm pretty open and acceptable of the majority of questions that people tend to have based on my disability or how I do things or why I do certain things or don't do other things or whatever. And in most cases, I will answer whatever sort of questions you guys have, just in general. But of course, if it's something that comes across as rude or you just, flat out gross or something, I'm probably not going to answer your question, and I'm going to tell you that that's just not an appropriate question. Please either ask a different question or just stop asking me questions, if you really can't be mature about it. If you wouldn't ask anybody else the question, don't ask me that question because, I'm a regular human just like the rest of you. So, there are things that I'm going to answer and things that I'm not going to answer. And you kind of have to have some common sense when you're asking people questions. So, use that with me as well. Now, also understand that there are a lot of different kinds of people out there, and there are a lot of different kinds of people with disabilities, with all sorts of different disabilities. So that means that just because I answer a question for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else is going to want to answer that question the same way or that they're comfortable with answering that. So if they're not comfortable with it, don't push it because you don't want to, anger them or whatever. Some people react negatively to that sort of stuff. So you kind of just have to figure it out on a on a case by case basis as to what's appropriate to ask and what's not. But in most cases, I will answer just about anything you've got. The other thing that's kind of crazy is that a lot of times I get some of the best questions from kids, just because they will ask me a question and they're doing so to, they just generally want to know. They're curious. They're not doing it to be rude. They're not doing it to be mean or, insensitive or something like that. They're just curious because it's something different. It's something new and they want to know about it. So they ask me that question. So stuff like, are your legs broken? Or, what's wrong with you? Or what's wrong with your legs? Or are you paralyzed? Or whatever. In most cases, I answer those questions, with the following, and I'm just going to give you the long version. Sometimes I give people the short and sweet version, but I have time, so I'll give you the long version so that you get all the nice bits and pieces put together all at once, so that hopefully this just answers it once and for all, and it's here. So, excuse me. So, I was born as a normal kid, just like most everybody else. After a week of being here, though, I got sick with a bad case of viral meningitis. It kind of just came out of nowhere. The doctors don't really know why I got sick with it, but it showed up. So they took me to my parents took me to the local hospital, so that those folks over there could help me out, or at least try to. Um, but I started having seizures at one point while I was there, uh, and they were freaking out because the seizures weren't stopping and they weren't really sure what they could do to get them to stop. Um, so they decided that it was in my best interest for them to call another hospital in Houston that had more equipment and could specialize more in trying to figure this out. So they called up Texas Children's Hospital in Houston to see if they had any space to take me, right away. And it turned out that Texas Children did not have any space. They were full. All their beds were full, so they didn't have a way to take me. Plus, they also didn't have a way to get to Bryan quickly, so it would have taken them a lot longer to get me to the next hospital, and it needed to be quick because of the seizures and whatnot. Um, so instead, they ended up calling Memorial Hermann, which is also in Houston, but it's close to Texas Children's, but it's not the same hospital. So they called those guys, asked them, "Hey, do you guys have any space?" And they said that, yeah, we have space. Plus, we also have one of those life flight helicopters, which was good because that meant that they could get me there quickly. The hospital here at the time didn't have one of those helicopters. They do now, but back when I was a baby, they didn't have one. So it was good that the folks at Memorial Hermann had one. So they came over, picked me up via the helicopter. I've officially ridden in a helicopter once in my life. I don't remember it, but I was in one because, not for the best reasons. But yeah, I was in one. So, anyways, so they tried to stop the seizures. Once I got to Houston, they were also trying to lower the level of brain swelling that was going on because I had excess fluid in my head around my brain. So they were trying to get that to dissipate and go away. And so they had me hooked up to all kinds of machines and tubes and wires and stuff. I looked like something out of the first Iron Man movie, just kind of like a conglomeration of tubes and wires and all kinds of mess all over the place. So, yeah, I looked kind of funny, but it was all needed so that they could monitor my condition, try to help me out. I had a breathing tube, and they needed to give me that because when I had seizures, every time I had one, I would stop breathing. So they needed the breathing tube so that air could keep circulating through my system. I was in the NICU for a week, and after a week, I had stabilized enough to be moved to a regular, patient room. And at that point, I was laying pretty still. If you don't know anything about babies, when you're that young, normally the kid will be moving around a lot, rolling around, moving their arms, moving their legs. I wasn't doing a whole lot of that. I was pretty stationary, once they had me in a position. So they had physical therapists that came and tried to work with me to, stretch me out and help me get my muscles moving and stuff. So, yes, I've had therapy for that long, since very, very early on. So I'm used to it. So for all you weenies out there who complain about going to PT after an injury or something, it's really not that big a deal. So you should go do it because it'll be better for you. Yeah. So then the doctors ran an MRI of my brain, and at that point, everything looked okay, which was kind of confusing for them because I wasn't moving much. So they were trying to see, if something was going on with my brain. But when they ran the first one, the brain cells hadn't had a chance to die yet. They weren't all dead, so the MRI came up fine. Um, it wouldn't have been until later that when my parents had another MRI run, that they found out that some of the brain cells were dead, and that was what was causing that was what was causing my condition. So the doctors and therapists at the time guessed that I probably had cerebral palsy. I just say CP for short because it's shorter and easier. So if you hear me say CP, that's what it is. No, I'm not saying PC. That's personal computer. It's different. This is CP. So if I say CP, that's what I'm talking about. So they said that I could have walked with a limp or had a speech impediment or been mentally retarded, but they weren't sure on any of that yet because I still needed to take, an IQ test and some of the other motor skills and stuff. It was way too early to tell whether I was going to be capable of those things or what was going to happen with all that. So the doctors had to wait until I was about 3 before they could give me an IQ test to check my intelligence. But fortunately, or I guess unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I started talking at 14 months old. And when I say talking, I don't mean just like one word here or there or like some gibberish or whatnot. I mean like I was speaking in full sentences and having like full conversations with people. Now, it wasn't very high level, but I was forming my own sentences and whatnot at the time. And I talked a lot, apparently, or so I'm told. My family members have told me that I never shut up. Probably because I had questions about anything and everything at the time. But that just helped prove that I didn't have any kind of mental deficiency. I still don't, as far as I'm aware at this point. My mental stuff is all here, so that was all good. So I probably at the time had an opinion about just about everything, and I know I was asking questions about every single thing I could find to ask. Ooh, what's that? What does that do? Why is that here? Why does that look like that? All kinds of stuff that a normal kid asks. But, I would have full-fledged conversations with my parents and my brothers and stuff, and it was crazy. So all that said, though, I still pray for all those doctors, consistently all the time, because I know that situations like mine have to be difficult for them to handle as well, because you never want to see a patient go through that. I still, I don't remember who those people are, but I still pray for them because they need it. I've heard it said that everyone gets assigned a guardian angel by God when we're created. But I'm pretty sure that in addition to my guardian angel, that for that period of time, there was a whole team of angels assigned to me, because that's about the only way that I would have gotten pulled out of that free fall back to solid ground enough to move forward. Real quick, I just want to go over what cerebral palsy is and what it does from my perspective as to what it impacts physically for me, so that you just have an idea of what level of CP I have, and just what living with that means. So both sides of my body are impacted, my left side and my right side. So nothing is, exempt from this. I have excess muscle tone, meaning that my muscles, they get tighter than most people. Your muscles are tight when you flex your hand and, make a fist, then your finger muscles are tight. Then when you let go, it relaxes and it releases. But sometimes my muscles will, contract, just randomly when I'm not even trying to do something that requires them to contract. And that's just because the brain is sending those signals saying, hey, contract now. even though I'm not actively telling it, my body is kind of just doing that itself sometimes. It's not all the time, but it does happen every so often. And there's no way to like predict when it's going to happen and when it's not. Um, my muscles are extra tight because of that muscle tone. I'm not very flexible. You can ask any of my physical therapists that I've had for, the last 2 decades, and any of them will tell you that I'm not tight, or that I am tight, that I'm not flexible. Sorry. Um, yeah. Anyways, the muscle tone also means that my muscles spasm. So that just means that like the muscle shakes. Now, it doesn't hurt. It's just kind of annoying. But like if you see, something in a video, my hand or whatever starts to, I'm doing this on purpose now, but if it starts shaking or something, like this, or twitching or whatever, that's fine. It happens all the time. It's not a problem. It's just part of the CP. I haven't had a seizure since those first couple of weeks, so it's not that I'm suddenly having a seizure. Well, hopefully, I mean, I don't think that should happen, and it hasn't for 20 years now. But yeah, so anyways, I also have less fine motor control than most people, which affects things like hand dexterity, grip, um, things like that. I can't, I can't put my hands palm up, so like when you go to receive change and you put your palm up so that the person can put the coins or whatever in your hand. Yeah, I can't do that. I can get my hand to about half, so like here's flat, and I can try to turn it. I can get it to about there, but that's about it. It's not turned all the way over, and that's just because of it, because of the CP. It also means that I use a power chair to get around. At this point, I don't walk because my muscles are too tight. Now I can stand to make transfers and things like that. So like I can get from my bed to my chair, and I can get from my chair to the toilet or to another chair or into a car, if I need to, and backwards. But I don't like get up and walk across the room, or walk outside, or run down the street or whatever. Like I wish, but I don't do that. So I use a power chair instead for that. So that's all I have for this section. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the help question, which is basically just when people ask, hey, do you need help? And how I, struggle with, sometimes asking for help from other people, and just like related issues to that, as well as issues related to adaptive equipment etiquette, just kind of how you're supposed to, or at least from my perspective, how it's polite to act, around stuff like my chair or other equipment that I use that helps me, do function throughout the day. Yeah. So until we get to that point, remember to be considerate when you ask people questions, and make sure to check if they're okay with you asking them questions before you just start throwing questions out there at them, because you don't want to catch them off guard. If you have questions for me, please feel free to leave a comment, send me a message on here. You can also send me an email if you'd like. I've got that set up, so I'll leave that in the description, and you guys can do that. If you know me, you can come find me or give me a call. If you don't, please email me or comment. I'll check on all of it. But yeah, until then, take care and God bless, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.